What is good, R&B squad? This is Heart of Ruth. I trust that this message meets you guys in good spirits. If you're new here, we don't believe that you're here by accident. Welcome. We're happy to have you, and Jesus is even happier. The Lord took me to the book of Joshua chapter 5 recently. There's a word that he has for somebody, and that particular scripture ties into this word. So I'm going to read Joshua chapter 5, verses 13 to 27, and it reads, Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, Are you for us or for our enemies? Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, What message does my Lord have for his servant? The commander of the Lord's army replied, Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. So Joshua son of Nun called the priests and said to them, Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the army, Advance, march around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding. But Joshua had commanded the army, Do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout, then shout. So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the army returned to the camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. Then the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard following the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the 2nd day they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. On the 7th day they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet, Joshua commanded the army, Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in the house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. All the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into the treasury. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and the sound of the trumpet, at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed, so everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle and sheep and donkeys. And I'm going to put a link to that chapter in the description so you guys can read the full thing for yourselves. The Lord is saying to someone right now that you are already in the promised land. It may not look that way because it's quiet. When Joshua and the Israelites and the army of the Lord went in to Jericho, everything was quiet. The Lord instructed them to keep quiet. So things may be looking a bit quiet around you. You may have thought that when you entered the promised land, you would enter with a bang and there would be a loud celebration. No, no, no. The Lord wants the enemy to be confused at this time. That is why he told Joshua and the Israelite army to keep quiet. It was to confuse the enemy so that they wouldn't know what's coming next. So you're already in your promised land, okay? It's just quiet right now because the Lord has it that way. Now the walls of Jericho will fall. You are the keeper of the keys. You have blocked the gate to Jericho. No one is going to come out of there or get in there until that wall falls. However, yes, this comes with a however. The Lord had to give the Israelites instructions, and they had to follow those instructions to the T. And that was the only way those walls were going to come down. If the Israelites did not follow God's instructions, that wall was staying up and they would have been defeated. So you're in your promised land. This is where you're at right now. It is quiet around you. Listen for the Lord's instructions. Listen very carefully. Whether you're preparing for that new job, you're preparing for that big move to a different state or a different city or a new home, you're preparing for your kingdom marriage, whatever it is you're preparing for, the Lord is saying that you are already in the promised land. It looks a little quiet, but that's because the Lord is planning a strategy, or he has a strategy to confuse the enemy. So that is why it is quiet. Listen now for the Lord's instructions and follow to the letter what he tells you to do, because those walls of Jericho will come down once you follow his instructions. So I hope that that word bless someone. I will be back with another word as soon as the Lord releases me to do so. Take care.